today we are going to be preserving the world's most perfect protein source. We're going to be freeze drying eggs. Hi friends, welcome to Rouse Rising. My name is Katie and I have an exciting collaboration to share with you in today's video. This video is a part of the May It Last 24 collaboration with the channel The Budget Preppers with Natasha over there. She has gathered together so many channels to be a part of this collaboration, so make sure you check out the playlist linked down below in this video's description so you can get all kinds of ideas for how to make your food last for long term. We're going to be freeze drying eggs. There are many reasons why you would want to preserve fresh, raw, freeze dried eggs. You can use them for baking, for scrambling eggs, making omelets, making quiche, all sorts of things. So having this perfect protein stored on your shelf, and it is going to be available to you for years to come. So should there be an egg shortage, or if your chickens stop laying eggs in winter time, we have had an egg shortage before. Do you guys remember those years? Oh yeah, it's happened. So I have been diligent about freeze drying eggs, and I've learned a few things in my freeze drying adventures, especially when it comes to freeze drying raw liquid products. So I'm going to give you all of my tips and tricks and how to avoid the mistakes that I have made. We're going to talk all about that in today's vlog. We're going to be freeze drying these delicious farm fresh eggs. The first step in this process is to get some fresh chicken eggs and crack them into a large vessel. You can do this in a large bowl and use either an immersion blender or a whisk or a fork to break up your eggs. For this purpose, I am putting them in a blender and I am blending the eggs up. It just works a lot quicker for me and it makes pouring the eggs a lot easier. Next, we're going to fashion a level spot in a freezer to pour the liquid eggs into the trays. I'm going to place a lid on this tray so that I can stack another tray on top of it. Continue filling the trays and placing lids and stacking until all the trays are stacked in the freezer. I'm going to allow this mixture to completely freeze for at least 24 hours. This does a few things. It makes the freeze drying process much more efficient, and it's going to save you money on your electric bill in the long run. And it ensures that your food is in a solid state before the freeze dryer kicks on to vacuum mode. I will go into more detail about this and why it's important later on in this video. I have pre-frozen these eggs in these trays, and this is what they look like when they freeze. You can freeze your liquid items in your freeze dryer. I have not done that with this Harvest Right, but in a previous life, I owned a different brand freeze dryer, and I freeze dried liquid items. I tried to freeze dry cow colostrum in that freeze dryer with liquid cow colostrum. What happened was the shelf registered the colostrum was a negative degree and that it was frozen all the way through. It was not, and the vacuum cut on and there was a colostrum explosion inside of my then freeze dryer. I'm pretty sure that this machine will not have that mistake, but just to be safe, I always pre-freeze my liquids. So we're gonna start our freeze dryer now. It says starting up, cooling the vacuum chamber. Wait 15 minutes before loading the trays. So I'm gonna wait 15 minutes. I'm gonna pop these back into the freezer and make sure that they stay cold, or I'll just stick them in the fridge. And when this is done pre-freezing in 15 minutes, I can put in my trays. And it should kick on to vacuum to freeze dry these eggs pretty soon. And this will actually decrease the freeze drying cycle. So if you put already frozen food into the freeze dryer, this machine will run for less time, right? Because it doesn't have to do the cooling for as long to freeze everything on the inside. And when you pre-freeze your foods, you're not going to be at risk of having any kind of misreadings from any freeze drying machines, whatever brand you may own. You will not have any misreadings of temperature and have an explosion. So you want to make sure that you freeze your liquids in your deep freezer for at least, or your freezer, for at least 24 hours to make sure that they are completely frozen solid all the way through. That will prevent any kind of explosion when the vacuum comes on, because imagine the vacuum pump cuts on and it starts sucking, and anything that's liquid that's not frozen solid is going to get sucked through this whole space inside of here, and trust me, it is a mess that you want to avoid, especially when you're freeze drying eggs. So when we place these eggs in here, we will be removing the lids, but I like these lids that I got from Homestead. I really like them because they double for, I'll explain, they actually triple, they serve many purposes. The first purpose is you can put the lids on your liquid items or your soft foods, whatever. Put lids on them, and then you can easily stack your trays, right? Then you're able to stack them, like so. These lids also double as single serving size portion trays. So you can put your beef stews or your rice or whatever you want to freeze dry in here. And they're going to be portioned out so that you can put them in your Mylar bags to take with you when you go camping, hunting, or to store away for a rainy day. If you make a huge batch of soup and you want to freeze dry that soup into little packets so that all you have to do is add hot boiling water to your soup and let it sit for a few minutes, and boom, you got a freeze dried soup. You've got, you know, pre-portioned meals. So you just fill these up. I did that with my yogurt cereal bars that I made, and I will leave that linked down below in this video's description. But I use these trays for that. So these trays can actually go into the Homestead freeze dryer as is with whatever food you have portioned down on it. You can use those as well. You can pre-freeze in these, and they stack and clip on, so they're going to be secure. See? Voila. I'm going to pop these back in the fridge for just a little bit and wait until this vacuum is completely cooled. I've got all of my trays. This says load trays into freeze dryer and close drain valve. So you take the lids off. I did about 30 eggs per blender, and I would pour most of the blender in, so maybe 20 to 24 eggs would go in the tray. And you can see around the tray there's still room around the edge. Not so much room on this corner, but everywhere else there's a little bit of room, so I was a little bit not level, but I still maximized most of the space in the tray. I would say 20 to 24 eggs is really good. You can fit more in there now, and especially if you put your trays in the freezer and then fill them and you're not transporting and sloshing stuff everywhere. When I freeze these eggs, I put the tray in the freezer and then I pour the eggs into the tray when it's sitting in the freezer. I do not try to carry raw liquids in a tray from point A to point B. That is not my thing. And no, my freezer is not perfectly level, but I was still able to get about 20 eggs per tray, I believe. All right, once all of our trays are loaded into the freeze dryer, we're gonna make sure our drain valve is closed. And the drain valve is over here. This is closed. If it was turned this way, this is open, this is closed. So I'm gonna hit continue. It says it's freezing, but it will detect that everything is frozen in there very soon. Right now, the chamber is 21 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will drop down, and once it gets to a certain negative degrees, the vacuum will kick on, and we will have freeze-dried eggs by tomorrow sometime. All right, so far this has been drying for 9 hours and 53 minutes. You can see that it is in fact drying and starting to shrink up. Just listen, this machine is really quite quiet. I'm gonna get up close to the pump. The pump kind of echoing off the wall and echoing off the, but as you can hear, it's not really loud. The last machine that I had was really loud. The vacuum pump was super loud, but this one is just kind of sounds like a air conditioner or a refrigerator or freezer kicking on. All right, this just has condensation built up on it, and there's some condensation or frost on the outside because this has probably been sitting like this for the last 8 hours or so because I slept all last night. Here we are this morning and I'm just now getting to this. So I'm gonna let these trays warm right now for about a few minutes, and I will then open and check them, but I want them to warm up before I pull them out because I don't want their coldness to generate condensation or to create condensation on my eggs or on the trays. So we're gonna warm those trays up in there, and then we'll take them out and check them, and if we need more dry time, we will then select more dry time. And then if we need to once this is all done, we'll hit the defrost button and we will defrost it, and everything will drain down into that bucket. So, all right, all of our trays are warm. So I'm gonna go ahead and start bringing these into the kitchen to my food processor. And we're gonna process these up and get them into jars. All right, we've done that. So we are going to defrost it. Next, you'll just hit the defrost. All right, I hit the defrost button and keep the valve open. All right, next we are gonna start loading this up into this food processor and doing small batches and filling up our jars. You have the option, you can add oxygen absorbers to these. I did not add oxygen absorbers to these today, but I might do that down the road. Make sure you date and write the contents of your jar on the top. And the reason why you put oxygen absorbers in there is if this happens to break a seal, and let's say you have the lid on it gently, if it breaks the seal, it can possibly reseal that by absorbing the oxygen, but and keep your food safe. But for now, we'll just leave them like this, date them, put the contents in, and store them. So we want to reconstitute our freeze-dried eggs. So what we're going to do is I'm going to open up my freeze-dried eggs, and I'm going to do 2 tablespoons of freeze-dried eggs. And then we're going to do 2 tablespoons of freeze-dried water. Okay. Now this is going to be 1 egg, and I'm going to make some scrambled eggs. So I'm going to add a little bit more, but I just wanted to show you the consistency. The reason why we blended up our eggs in the blender or in the food processor to make them more powdery is because if you leave them how I did in this particular jar with chunks of eggs, those chunks don't quite dissolve and they stay a bit chunky in your egg mixture. So that is why we suggest putting your eggs in the food processor to get the chunks out a little more. So I'm going to make myself 3 eggs. I'm going to make myself 3 scrambled eggs, and I'm going to show you guys that these turn out just as beautiful once they are scrambled. So remember, 2 tablespoons of egg powder to 2 tablespoons of water. Let this sit for about 5 minutes so that all the water can be absorbed into the eggs. And once that has sat for about 5 minutes, we are going to go and put these into our hot cast iron skillet, and we're going to make ourselves some delicious scrambled eggs. So you can use this to make quiche recipes, to make frittatas. You can use these eggs in baking to make cakes. Just make sure that you're rehydrating your eggs before you add them to any recipes. So my favorite thing is to take my freeze-dried eggs onto trips that we go on for travel so that I don't have to grocery shop, and they store much easier than the whole eggs in the shell do. So I like to take them, and then I also take my freeze-dried zucchini, and I will mix those together with some milk and bake it to make a quiche or a frittata. You add your cheese and everything else. So these eggs turn out wonderful. I highly recommend freeze drying eggs. If you have a friend that has a freeze dryer, maybe you and your friends can go in on one together. That way you can have long-term quality foods stored in your home. These will last up to 20 years. So pretty awesome source of protein and fat that will last you for 20 years. All right, I'm just gonna get my stove over here turned on, and we'll scramble these up. All right, we're gonna try these eggs out now. They have the same texture as fresh eggs. These are not your McDonald's eggs or cafeteria eggs. These are fresh tasting, freeze-dried eggs that I rehydrated with water, and they're perfect. They're moist, they're delicious. They don't have that rubbery, chewy texture that the cafeteria eggs do. I suggest you check out a freeze dryer so that you guys can start stocking up on your perfect proteins, so that you can start freeze drying all of your leftover meals, so that you can have easy camp food, MREs, meals ready to eat, so that your emergency food stores are fully stocked. Get yourself a freeze dryer. Check it out, link down below in this video's description. Thank you to Natasha at the Budget Preppers for putting together this amazing May It Last 24 collaboration where we're all sharing with you our foods that we are putting up on our shelves for long-term shelf stability. Thank you so much for checking out this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye! Here, y'all can eat those eggs.